Okay, the very best. So, as I said, this is our episode 7, and you are my 7th guest. This time I'm not making a mistake. And so, yeah, back to, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I got a message from your son that he's a friend of mine, but we are like a social friend on Facebook only. And he really recommended you that we should have a conversation and having a podcast together. The way that I got the chance to know your son was back to 2 years ago when I started working on the lighting the Centennial Bridge project, that I had that idea.
He made a model of that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did the model of that too. Yeah, exactly. So that was the reason that we got connected on Facebook.
Right.
I shared the video on Facebook. It went viral, and he messaged me. He said, I'm making a model of that, and I said, I have a good news for you because I had the blueprint of the bridge with all details.
Right.
And I sent him over. He said that was a really big help. So after that, yeah, we had a kind of conversations.
Okay.
So it's one of my dreams that make this Centennial Bridge illuminated. And he talked a lot about you, that you were involved in many projects also, like right here in Miramichi. So I was like, that's a great chance for me to learn a lot of things at the same time from you, and that would be great topic for a podcast that we can talk about the project that you were involved with right here in Miramichi. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I'll shoot him, but I'll thank you.
That's okay. But I'm sure that will be a great podcast. One of my first goals at the beginning of this podcast, I mentioned that I want to make a comfortable zone, comfortable area, and having a nice chat with my guests that they feel confident and safe, that share whatever they want based on our topics and based on their favorites. So my podcast category is a multi-topic podcast. We are not only talking about like history only. We are talking about many other stuff based on our guest experiences and like topics. How would you like me to call you? Derek is fine?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, Derek. Yeah. So
I'll answer to anything, but Derek works.
Derek works. Sounds great. Thanks so much. Yeah, we had a chat before starting this podcast, and I like to know a little bit about your background and your family, maybe, because I do remember your family was also into shipbuilding, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, would you like to start with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, my family or ancestors came over in 1825 from Ireland and settled here on the Miramichi. And one of the youngest sons, I think he was around 1845, 46, he joined a partnership for shipbuilding on Beaubears Island. And I believe they built something like 30 ships. And I know there was a book written locally on the history of all the ships that were built. And that's where they got in the woodworking business. In 1857, he sold his shares in that company and he moved to Nelson. And they bought a sawmill. And they've been in the sawmill business for over 100 years. It's the only mill in the Miramichi actually that went non-stop with the exception of one winter through the Depression right up until it closed down, and the business closed down in 1986. The sawmill itself closed down in 1971. We just couldn't compete with the big companies with the push button and the labor and all that sort of thing that would, make production of lumber cheaper.
Yeah, that's interesting. But you said they were at the Beaubears Island. Was there any access, like a land access also to Beaubears Island before? They were like in the...
No, always an island.
Okay, yeah. So the shipbuilding...
And they're shipping right on the island, exactly.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I've been there a couple times on the island. And for the first time when I was there, I got lost. I don't know, we went in the middle of the island and we went out of the trail. We said, let's go somewhere else, like in the middle of it. And then we couldn't find our way back, and we didn't have signal also in the middle of it. But yeah, that's amazing.
Well, you were captured, at least you were surrounded by water, so something had to happen.
One way and go straight, you will reach
you'll find water anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure. So during those times, the economy of Miramichi mostly was relying on this shipbuilding too, right?
Well, there was something like 26 lumber mills on the river back in those days.
Okay.
So it was a tremendous industry, really, for the Chatham, Newcastle, actually the whole river area. And the mills, and there were some, huge mills built here in Chatham and so on. And that came to an end around, I'm just guessing at the year, but somewhere around 1929, 1930. And at that time, there was only about 6 mills running from that original number. And the only reason why our mill survived and it didn't shut down was that England at the time, where the market was, where all the lumber went, they came over to meet with the lumber owners and wanted them they guaranteed them a price for the lumber. Now the price, you couldn't make money at it, but it would cover the cost of doing business. So it was a livelihood, but there was no profit to be made. And they approached my grandfather, and he set up the meeting with the other 5 or 6 lumber owners. And they met with this delegation from England, and they presented this guarantee. And they were given, I think, a day or two to think it over.
Okay.
And either accept it or reject it. And everybody rejected it except for my grandfather. They felt that the lumber market was going to rise and they'd get a higher price for their lumber, and so they said no. So my grandfather was the only one that signed, and 2 weeks later, the price of lumber dropped 50%, and they're all out of business.
Oh no.
Yeah. So luckily, my grandfather decided to take the prudent way, what he thought, and not gamble on the future, and as a result, that mill never stopped.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Do you know about when we were talking about shipbuilding? It came to my mind. I was one time at the community center at the Loggyville, and I do remember like they had their own money that they were getting paid, and there was like some sort of coins, and they could only spend it only on also Loggyville in their own town. So they couldn't, for example, go to the other city. Was there something like that also in
Yeah, that was a lot of the mills. They all had like a grocery store.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
that type of thing, and the Burchills had one as well. And basically, what would happen is they would buy all their goods at the store, and they would deduct it from their pay.
Okay.
And that's the way it worked back in those days. And that grocery store operated until, I would say, the mid-60s.
Really?
1960s, yeah.
Which groceries?
It was, well, the store is now, it's a closed office now, but it was in Nelson Miramichi, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was a common thing where, the coin thing,
Right.
in other words, you were sort of obligated to, it was only good at where the owner, the president, yeah.
Where you are, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what I was gonna ask, so you raised also in Nelson area? Are you from Nelson? Or
No, I was raised in Bushville.
Bushville?
Actually, our home was built. They built the home, and they moved in a week after I was born in 1946. Mm-hmm. And it was a home right next to the golf club. So that's where I was brought up. I don't recommend it to anybody because you want to be around where there's kids and so on. And the only way I could get around it was I would go with my father every Saturday and go up to my grandfather had a farm, and there was a bunch of kids always around there.
Yeah.
And that was the only entertainment, really.
Yeah, and many times, so for example, me as a newcomer, when I came to Miramichi, the first question people were asking me, why did you even choose Miramichi? Why did you come to here? Because they still believe in the Miramichi is kind of not a city, it's not growing, and they are surprised, most of them are surprised, why did you even come to here? Why? Probably they were expecting me to go to Toronto, Vancouver, right. Big cities. But first of all, my first reason was my brother. He was living in Moncton, and he know about the people right here in New Brunswick, and about the beauty of the province, and even about Miramichi. He traveled to Miramichi a lot, and the Moncton campus, the course that I took was electrical construction, and the Miramichi campus was the closest one to the Moncton that they had seats available, and that was the reason why I came to.
Okay, interesting.
After that, I had this chance to go to Moncton, and my instructor told me, since your brother living over there, you can move to Moncton whenever you want. And I said, okay, that's a really great deal. I'm gonna go. And it was a week that I was staying right here in Miramichi, and I fall in love with everything over here. I was like,
what's not to love, right?
What's that?
What's not to love?
Right. I feel sense of belonging, I can
Oh,
say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
People help you to build something here. Whatever you want. For example, they will support you, they will understand you, they're having a conversation with you. One time I went to the Halifax, and I got used to saying hi to people right here in Miramichi, even when I don't know them on the street. And I did the same thing in Halifax. I was keep saying hi to people on the street. Nobody would answer me. None of them would answer me back.
Right.
And so that's the great thing, that you can feel like so many probably young people, they had their idea is go in big cities, make a lot of money, travel to cities like maybe come here for fishing, and then for maybe retirement coming back to like Miramichi. My idea was kind of different, but I'm still working on it. I'm on a journey. But my idea before was like, no, I'm gonna stay here, build my own like career and make trust in the community, make my foundation here because I'm from other countries. And then I'm gonna move maybe even for my retirement or my trips on vacation, going to big cities like Toronto or Vancouver to just.
They're nice places. They're nice places to to visit.
Yeah.
But that's the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. But sometimes like the life take us for the careers or like a future, like education.
That's right. You never know where life's going to lead you.
Yeah, exactly. So everything is all right. Every pathway took us somewhere that we might be. So your family, as I realized, was kind of also, like today call it kind of entrepreneurs. I was wondering if the family also affected you on your education, that what you need to take on your university. Was it really relatable what you study on your family's background?
Absolutely not. I hated school, but I enjoyed I didn't enjoy the studying, let me put it that way. And I'm visual as opposed to, I have to see things drawn out as opposed to reading a book. And I didn't know that until my son has the same issue, and that's when I realized what was holding me back from being able to absorb, things that you're supposed to absorb in order to write an exam. And so I had a difficult time in school. And when I graduated, I don't know how I graduated, but I did. And I told my father, I said, I'm not going to college because I said it's going to just be a waste of money. I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, but a waste of money. And he suggested I get a job in the bank. So he knew a manager in George Blakeney in Newcastle, or Bank of Nova Scotia. And I went up for an interview and I got a job as an office boy. And my very first job was to clean his carpet.
Yeah.
So that's where you start.
Yeah, that's just as well.
That's where you start.
Yeah.
So after that, you become a teller and then a discount clerk or an accountant or of some sort. But and that was back in 1965 when I joined the bank, and I was transferred to 6 different branches: St. John and Nashwaaksis and Chatham and Bath.
Isn't Nova Scotia Bank, is it the same Nova Scotia Bank we have today in Newcastle? Was the same location?
Well, yes. Yes. That was. I worked in the original building. It was a stone building back then, and then, of course, they closed down since. I don't know if it was because I left or anything, but anyway, they shut down. Okay. But unfortunately, but that was my education really. It was practical and so on, and then after I think I was with the bank about 6 or 7 years, and I kept moving up the scale, and I was an accountant for a while, and then the Scotia Plan loan officer, and that was the part I enjoyed the most. And the reason was that you were helping people. You tried to make things work. They come in and It works through the credit thing and so on. But if you could figure out a way to make it work for them, that was a win. So I really enjoyed that part of it. So then my father wanted me to come home and work in the family business. And I worked in the family business for 10 years. Worst 10 years of my life. I do not recommend working for your family because it can be brutal. And then the senior family will think later on in life, I don't know that was such a good idea after all, because they always seem to be attached to it, right?
Yeah.
But I worked for 10 years and I did all sorts of things in that 10 years. I traveled all over North America, really, not North America, well, all over Canada and northeastern states selling baby barns. Have you ever heard of baby barn? Our company is the one that coined the name baby barn for a little storage shed. Okay. And now everybody calls them baby barns, but ours was made of wood in a kit, and it was an 8x8 kit would sell for $239. Okay. And it was all finished now. So that was an experience. In the plywood mill, we were in the plywood business and different jobs and that. So I had quite a well-rounded background that probably a college education would never give me. Very practical.
Yeah, right. So I do know that you were a city councilor. What year, during what period was that when you became a city councilor of Miramichi?
I didn't bring my notes. I can't remember the dates. I should have brought
no, the reason why I asked the date was I wonder how many years was it after you start having your first job as in the bank?
Okay, well, I left the bank in around 1971, and then I worked for my father till 1981.
Okay.
And from 1981, I bought into the insurance company. It was a Blake Harriman agency, and I bought in as a junior partner because my father told me 3 years before that, he said the future of the lumber and the plywood business with us is coming to an end. Right. And he said, if you can find a job, well, he shook me up because I wasn't expecting it. So I started looking around, and then as luck would have it, this opportunity came up and I took it. And I wasn't in it 9 months when the senior partner wanted to get out. I don't know whether he couldn't stand me or he just wanted to get out of the neighborhood. I'm not sure. But anyway, he left. So there I was in the insurance business. I couldn't spell the word insurance then. I still can't spell it, but I'm still in the business. So anyway, but from that, I had my own business until from 1982 till 2010. So I was in it for 30 years. And then I think I was around 65 at the time, or close to it. And the opportunity came up to sell. And I sold it to the Hustis Group, who I work for today. And actually the last 10 or 12 years has been the best years of my life as far as work goes, because a lot of the pressures were gone of running your own business. Not that I want to discourage anyone from it, but I said I had enough after 30 years. Right. Leave it at that.
I heard a story, not a story, like a sentences I heard on just Instagram. It says, being an entrepreneur, building a business is jumping from the hill and on your way coming down.
Into the fire.
Yeah, on your way coming down, right. Build your own airplane.
Your own airplane, right.
And then if you survive, so it's
right.
Just hitting down until you build your airplane and then hitting back up. But
right.
That's how it is. So I can say like this. When I was also here in Miramichi, I found something very meaningful that I'm gonna call it a social responsibilities that I personally didn't really had it as a young person back home in my country, Iran. And then I realized social responsibilities is something that everybody needs to become involved in the community that they are and be part of something. They're born, and I believe after they born and after their death, there needs to be some changes happen. For most of the people, good changes happen after their death. For some dictators that we had all around the world, some people and so many others, they built a lot of good stuff that the future generation that they can still use and get involved. And one of them I can say one of them is the topic that I want to talk about today is the Ritchie Wharf development. But before that, as I asked you about like you became a city councillor, I was wondering when was the first time? Do you remember when was the first time that you became like into public more?
Yes,
Because
yeah,
city councillor is just more
very,
into
very much
public.
so. Get back to your question about city councillor. I think it was from 2010 is when I sold the business, and I think that was my last year as a councillor, and I was in for about 4 years. So
Yeah.
2006, 2000 till 2011 or 10, I guess. That was that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, when we got married in 1971, my wife worked for the Bank of Montreal, and I worked for the Bank of Nova Scotia, and that's how we met. And we got a phone call after we were married from friends. I believe it was Fraser Howell, and they were in this group called the Jaycees, the Canada Jaycees. And the name of the unit or the club here was called the Newcastle Jaycees. And they encouraged us to join because what happens when you get married, all the people, if any, that you hung around with, and then you get married, all of a sudden they go by the wayside and you find things in common with and meet new people that are married.
Right.
Just married in that area. So what happened was the Jaycees was the perfect place to start with what going back to your question of how the community responsibility and so on. So none of us had a clue that in there about committee management or how to get involved or any of that stuff. And there were other clubs around. There was the Lions Club and the Kinsman Club, but the JC Club was totally different. We emphasize on they emphasize on leadership. And they taught every one of us to be a leader or how to be a leader and how to conduct a committee meeting, how to delegate responsibilities and so on. And how we did it was we'd come up with some crazy projects for the city. And I'll give you an example, or this town at that time. And one of them was the Christmas tree pickup.
Groceries we got?
Christmas tree.
Oh, Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas tree pickup. Now back then they didn't have artificial trees, right? So at the end, when Christmas was over, everybody threw their trees out, out by the driveway, and hopefully they disappear. So we made a project called the Christmas tree pickup, and we would go out as a group and we'd delegate, who would get the truck and who would look after this and where would they go and all these little details. And I can tell you one of the pick years, one of the funny things that happened was one of the Jaycees couldn't make it. It was David White, and his mother always made him work at the drugstore, and David didn't like to, say no because I know she wouldn't pay him. So anyway, we took all the trees and we decided David had just built a beautiful home with a big garage, double garage in it, attached. So we took all the Christmas trees and dumped them and put them all in his garage.
Okay.
We just filled it and left it there, not thinking about one little fire could, burn the place down. So we went down to the tavern, and we were down there having a great time. This was when it was all over, and the trees were still in the garage. And David, of course, found out about it, and he called the police chief, Earl Campbell, to come down and to the tavern and either arrest us or get those trees out. So.
Yeah.
We reluctantly went back and took the trees away and that way. But I was just illustrating some of the fun we had while we're doing these things, all these different projects that we take on. Now, unfortunately, the Jaycees didn't last a long time because they got away from what they were all about, which was the training, the organization and how to run a committee. And that's really the backbone. And an awful lot of those members, when I was involved, and members after I was gone, had left. They all became leaders in the city in various ways, or organizing events and so on. That's how, to answer your question, get involved in the community. But no, it's not. Jaycees unfortunately has folded because we always believed in the early days, and this is what we were taught, that you have to be motivated to get out of bed. And what motivates you to get out of bed and go to work is money.
Okay.
Okay, put food on the table and so on. And the motivation was, okay, how do you do this? And as a result, if we wanted to raise money for something, we had to figure out how do you go about doing it, how do you organize, and so on. And it was all part of there were a lot of training. Like we would have senior people come up from Moncton, as an example. Charlie Lawson is the one that speaks out to me that I remember quite clearly. And he would come up and they'd put on these sessions, for us. And then we would take that information and put them on as new people came in.
Yeah.
But that's how it worked.
Okay. Yeah. So you said during those times they were still Rotary clubs and other clubs too, right? But they were like each other.
The other clubs were fundraisers.
Okay.
They this is what they did. As far as the doing the basics of the training and so on, I don't think they didn't emphasize that as the JC thing was. The JC thing was that if you have a lot of money, you're not going to do anything, you see. So we had to make sure that whatever we did, there was no money left in the bank, so we'd have to do something else. One of the things that kind of weakened the Jaycees over the long years was they did a radio bingo. Well, they made so much money on that, there was no motivation to do anything else. And but that wasn't really what Jaycees was all about. Although the meeting people and the parties, all that was part of the JC thing, which would have carried on.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing that there was a place that you could go.
Exactly.
Learn and
Meet people.
Meet people,
And
networking.
so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So how that ended up? So when you were involved with those projects, and so you mentioned one of them as an example, that was kind of motivated you or found yourself that you can also like involve more as a city councilor, for example. On upcoming topics, I'm gonna ask you some questions because I'm kind of here not also interviewing. It's not the interviews. It's about sometimes me learning from the experience of my guests, and at the same time, my audience can also take advantage of it too. But for example,
I should be charging you then.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone else gets paid for doing this stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The reason, like, I'm on a board of, I don't know. You were also, I think.
You're governor over
NBCC.
NBCC.
Yeah, and the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on a board of Chamber of Commerce. I was wondering, you were also part of the Chamber of Commerce back in the day, and so I'm here to, like, learn a lot about these projects. For example, as I said, like the dream is lighting the Centennial Bridge. The last couple of episodes we had, Adam learned a lot about how things work in the government.
Right.
And so this is also.
I can give you my own version of how things work too later on in our conversations.
Yeah. But do you wanna?
I mean, back in the day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really want to have the story. I kind of put a star over here on it because that's really cool and really important, and it's very nice about the behind the scene of how the Ritchie Wharf park today, we can say park today, was how that development project started, what was the behind the scene. And I do remember.
You want the whole story?
Maybe a little shorter. We are going to have a time limit too.
You can edit this thing.
Yeah, I kind of usually try not to cut anything because I love all part of conversation. But I just want to know, like, where the money come from, what was supposed to happen,
all right.
and what was the challenges. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I was president of the Newcastle Business Association at the time. And every meeting we had, we were aware that there was a committee set up, and I think it was a historic committee under Jack Ullick. I think it was his idea, or it probably was his idea at the time, that they wanted to build a shipbuilding museum. Okay? So every year would go by, and through probably Paul Dawson, who was a councillor, and then a minister, I don't know whether he directly got the money for them at that time, but I think he did. But if he was in power at the time, that's what I can't remember. But anyway, the town of Newcastle got $5 million to build this shipbuilding museum. Okay, so they had this $5 million sitting there in the bank. Year 1, nothing happened. Year 2, nothing happened. Year 3, nothing happened. And all of a sudden, year 4, the government took back $2 million, so now they're down to $3 million. And still nothing going forward. So one day, because in the business community, again, I was president at the time, we kept asking the questions, when's this development? You know, they're all excited, it's going to be downtown, it's going to help the downtown business and so on. When's it going to happen? So anyway, I made it my business to go see our mayor, who was Peter Murphy at the time. And I said, Peter, I said, I would like to get on the committee for Ritchie Wharf. And I said, get this thing going. Because I said, I know you're down to $3 million and pretty soon there's going to be nothing. And Peter said, well, he said, let me think about it. And he said, I'll get back to you. 2 weeks went by, I never heard from him. So finally I said, well, I'm going to call him up. So I called him up and I said, Peter, what's the story here? He said, well, we got a problem. I said, okay. He said, I don't want you to be on the committee. I said, okay. He said, I want you to be the chairman of it, make it happen.
Okay.
And I said, well, we have Jack Ullick here. I said, I don't want to be stepping on anybody's toes. What he said, you know, it's not moving and we have to get it moving. So he said, I'll handle Jack. I felt kind of, embarrassed about the whole thing because I knew, he was the one behind it. So anyway, to shorten up the story, we soon discovered, and we had the city involved, or the town involved at the time. They were on the committee, and we came up along with the government would come over and they would meet every month to decide what we're going to do. And it didn't take us very long to figure out that a museum would not work. Because museums are, if any, they're a one-time visit and then nobody will ever go back to them. So, unless you had the money to keep updating it and bringing something exciting in, but they don't work, unfortunately, in most cases. So, through the discussion of the committee, the idea came up, okay, let's make it a place for the people to gather. We'll put in playground. We'll have these buildings and rent them out for ice cream shops and all this type of thing. And we'll have, as I said, the playground, and we'll have a floating wharf so that the boats can come in, and the whole thing will be a community thing, and we'll have entertainment. We'll build a thing for the entertainment. So that was how Ritchie Wharf idea germinated. And so we went ahead with it. And we ran out of money. Now you're wondering about money. So we were short $500,000. It was all finished, but we didn't have the mass, and we didn't have the buildings, and it was going to cost another $500,000 to complete that part of the project. And the reason why it overran, despite the fact we didn't have enough money to start with, was the expense of the infrastructure, the land. They said it was a lot worse than we thought, then a lot more money had to be put into it to make it right. So anyway, they said to me, okay, Burchill, go get the money. So I called up our premier of the day, who happened to be neighbors. We grew up together with the kids. And so I called him up and I said, Frank, we got a problem at Ritchie Wharf. And I said, we need $500,000. I said, the situation is, as I explained to it, I said, we ran out of money and we don't have money to finish it. It's like buying a house and can't afford to put the furniture in it. I said, it's really what's going on. And he said, let me work on it. And he said, I'll get back to you. 3 days later, he calls me up. He said, I got your money. He said, it was supposed to go somewhere else. And he said, I switched it, it's coming to you guys. And that's how we got the money. And to add on to the story, when it was finished, Paul Dawson, who he and I worked together quite a bit. You got to understand, I was known liberal, he's a known conservative, right? And he came to me at the opening day, and they said, look, he said, would you take the minister, Valcour, he's the tourism minister, and he's opening up Ritchie Wharf. I want you to go take him out in the boat and ask him for $500,000. And my eyes are just getting bigger, right? And I'm thinking, well, Why don't you ask him yourself, is what I'm thinking. But for some reason, he wanted me to do it. And what we wanted that money for was to pave from the library and the buildings right over to Ritchie Wharf. That was all gravel. It wasn't finished. So we needed $500,000. So we took him out in the boat, and Valcor thought Ritchie Wharf was the end. He just thought it was wonderful and beautiful. So I put the question to him, and he looked at me, and he said, "You'll have the money in 2 weeks." And when 2 weeks later, the money came in.
Really?
And that's how we got her paved. So,
Okay.
so there. That's my story in Ritchie Wharf.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, that's how things happen.
But you've got to remember, it's all about connections. It's all about relationships. And you only get connections through relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what worked. And that's what works.
Yeah.
I have a couple of more stories like that, which I'll tell you later on, if it makes the cut.
Yeah. I do have the kind of the network, but it's not it's a network that they just do know me and I do know them, but there's no background because I'm kind of new also to this community and this city. I'm always not trying to prove myself, but I'm trying to involved in the project.
You're doing a heck of a good job because everybody knows you.
Oh, thank you.
So
So try to like make that trust maybe, or make that connection, and as much as I get involved more with so many other projects, at the same time I'm kind of helping the leader of those projects to build it, and I'm hoping one day somebody would take my hand on the making the lighting the Centennial Bridge or any other project that I want to make it happen. Like another cool story that I want to mention about today is we were just passing today from the Chatham at the roundabout over there, and it reminded me the video that you took it with the drone. So personally, like I also really wanted to have some project also at the middle of the roundabout, like a statue or something like that. That idea was, I really want to see like a salmon statue, like the on the north.
I'm going to stop you there. Unfortunately, at these roundabouts, they don't want any distractions.
Any distractions?
Because you can imagine going around that thing, and you saw it on video where somebody went the wrong way, right? I mean, that's a proof. So I was just lucky that day when I caught it. Of course, somebody had to report me that I was taking a drone shot where I shouldn't have been, over the highway or something. And then the Department of Transportation came up to, talk to me about it. But they enjoyed the video, despite the fact they wanted to talk to me about it. But anyway, you notice there's brush, okay? And that's deliberately so we can't see the cars or anything to distract us as we're going around. So I think that idea probably wouldn't fly. Because you'd be driving in and you see this, oh, that looks really good, and then all of a sudden crash.
That kind of makes sense after, especially seeing that video that someone, I would play it on the top of this video that we are talking, that someone was totally going in the wrong way.
Exactly.
Any events or meeting that I was talking about like lighting the Centennial Bridge, I was saying the first question was is that going to distract the drivers going from the under the bridge or the drivers going through the bridge? And I'm like, I don't know, the river is beautiful. They might take a look at the river, or they see a beautiful sunset and they might make an accident too. I'm not gonna, so that's the driver's fault, that's my fault. But engineer design have their own standard to make these projects work as safe as possible.
Sure.
So I usually don't like those type of questions when it's coming, because it's not something also new that, I'm going to light up the bridge for the first time in the world. You have all kinds of them even around Canada. So that's not the smartest question they are asking, but I don't know.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
If you're asking me, I think it's a wonderful idea. Whether you get it by the authorities and find the money, well, that's another thing. But never say no. I would never take no for an answer.
I personally wouldn't take the no as an answer, but like, unfortunately these days, people are now fighting for just a simple sidewalk, and I had this pleasure to meet the minister. He's the current new minister in New Brunswick at the DTI, but even he asked me, send me the videos, send me the your idea how much it's gonna cost. I honestly didn't send it because I was like, I'm not gonna send it when the people cannot have a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Why? I don't want to work on a lot.
No, exactly.
So I didn't send the idea.
Pick your battles in order.
Yeah, exactly. So let's figure things out.
Right.
What the process of this bridge will go, and then I would take a next step. And were you also okay? One part of our podcast, and my goal is also promoting the local businesses like right here in Miramichi and like even all over Canada. It can be. We have like I think audience from all over the Canada and even from my country, Iran. When I'm checking the data, there are people from all over the world watching it. So, what would you recommend people to have a visit, or like what would be the business that would you recommend to people right here? Again, I said in Miramichi, I'm a fan of Miramichi.
I think the safest thing is not to focus in on any particular business, but to focus on the culture and the beauty, and that'll bring the people.
Right.
There's no particular business that I would promote or whatever from that point of view, but I would certainly focus on the culture, the friendliness of the Irish, the Scottish, and the French, and the Medabotnagia and so on. I think I got that word right.
That would be back to my guest. That's also another purpose of my podcast, that I'm having a variety. I have a diverse
opinion, right?
Each people coming. So that's really nice that you mentioned about the Irish. So I would love to have someone as talking about like an Irish festival and Irish history when they were settled here. I'm sure, like for example, Sean McCarthy, or there are a lot of people who could talk about it, but the local business, because these days I do know, and you, of course you know, as we mentioned at the beginning, these days it's so hard to keep up, and sometimes they need the media. That there are so many people, sometimes they don't know about this business, happening in here in Miramichi, or they don't have a good enough promotion, they might not have enough budget to advertise. So here we provide this like opportunity for them, that if, for example, or guest or I want to promote any business right here in Miramichi, we can talk about it to share the video.
Well, I mean, there's
any restaurant that you enjoy eating.
No, I'm not going down that road. I mean, I'm in the insurance business, and I insure an awful lot of people and businesses and so on. So I promote them all, but that's where I'm coming from when I say that, the culture, which includes all these things. I have to say that we're getting discovered. We have a world-class business at the airport now with Sandvik. I will only mention that from the point of view that there's 18 people coming over, I think, from the head office in Finland for 2 weeks here in the Miramichi, and they're just growing like crazy here, and they just love it here, and they're going to fish, they're going to do all sorts of things, and I only mention that because it's sort of like something that doesn't happen every day, to have something fall in your lap, and the survival of the airport and everything else, it just went, right off in space,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So
I don't know, you told me this was the first time that you were ever interviewed and being on a podcast. Would you join us like in the near future too? Because I do know there are a lot of like questions coming to my mind that I do know there's not enough time for that. But in the later future, would you be still interested to come and talk about
depends how what kind of a disaster this one is first.
Yeah, but
I do have to tell you, I want to tell you another story about getting money, raising money. And this is from the political end. Now, this has got to do with the golf club. Now, the golf club is not, I have to set the story up in the fact that governments do not like to fund golf clubs. They're seen as a recreation, and they should look after themselves, with the dues they charge and so on and so forth. So a few years ago, I was president at the time, and I became aware through getting questions from different people in the membership about an irrigation system that they wanted to put in at the golf club. And then they were working on it for over a year, trying to get money, and the answer they were always getting was, well, it's not dead yet, but they haven't got the money, and they were looking for $300,000. So election came up, and I had this in the back of my head, this thing about the money, and it was the opposition that was in power at the time. So Bill Fraser got elected, and I just casually mentioned to him after he was elected, I said, look, I just want to get one thing off our desk. I said, we've been getting the runaround, my understanding, we're getting the runaround for a year on whether, on the money, so they can go ahead and get the irrigation system put in. So I said, all I want to know, because I felt very tentative, I didn't want to put him on the spot to get me the money. That wasn't the conversation. The conversation was, just let us know if the Faal is alive or dead. In other words, if it's dead, tell us so we can move on. So anyway, unbeknownst to me, I got a call from John Foran, who's in the new minister from Newcastle, and he called me up. And he was on his way to Fredericton. And he said, Derek, he said, just want you to know that I'm supporting the request for the irrigation system. And he said, I want you to know I don't agree with it. It's nothing that I want to get involved with. But he said, you were help for me in Newcastle when I ran for the election. So he said, I just want you to know I'm going to support it. I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. All I know, what I said to Bill and never heard it sound back. So anyway, Bill, what had happened, Bill told me after the fact, this is what happened. He went to see the deputy minister on the third day over there, and they're going through files. And he came up to the golf club file. The minister put her to one side. The deputy minister put it to one side, and Bill said, what's that about? He said, that's about a golf club. He said, Tinker Malley and who's this Burchill guy? He said, they're working to try and get this, trying to get this money. And he said, you're not interested in that? And Bill said, well, yeah, I am. He said, well, who's this? Who's Burchill? He said, well, he's my campaign manager. And the guy looks at him, he said, you want to do that? You really want to do that? And Bill said, yeah, I do. Bill told me the story after the fact. Okay. So Bill told me that, he said, the minister said, all right, I'll tell you how to get the money. This is what you want to know. He said, first of all, you get the 3 MLAs in your area to agree to it. Okay, so John Foran was one, and then the other 2. And they all agreed to it. He said, once you do that, you go to the minister and you tell the minister you've got the 3 MLAs supporting this cause. You get him on board. And once you got him on board, and make sure you talk to one of the civil servants as well, so they know they're not hit from left field wondering what's going on. Yeah. He said, now you got to go to the premier once you got them. So Bill said, I went up and down the halls, he said, for 2 weeks before I finally cornered the premier. And he said, I want to speak to you for a moment. And Premier Graham at the time, he said, what do you want? And he said, well, this project over Miramichi. And I said, you want $300,000 for an irrigation system at the golf club. And Premier looked at him, he said, is this important to you? Bill said, yeah, it's very important to me. The Premier looks at the guy and he says, well, make it happen. Got the money. Okay. Now, I got to tell you, when the announcement was made, Bill and I hid. Like we said, let's get John Foran to make the announcement. He's from Newcastle and he's the minister, and that way you're not going to get blamed for this. And I said, I'll hide in the closet, which I did during the announcement. I didn't want to even be seen. So anyway, that's the story on how some things can happen.
Yeah, that was a really good one. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
But it comes down to developing relationships.
Relationships again. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
You named Mr. Bill Fraser on this podcast. We are going to invite him also.
Well, if you can get him to talk, and tell some of his stories, you'll be entertained for days.
So I would love to. I met him first time because he's working at which we met him with each other.
The Honda
or Kia?
Kia. Well, he worked for Honda and then he moved up to Kia.
Kia, yeah. I was looking for the cars, and before I even come to Miramichi, I started reading about the history and who's the mayor, who used to be, and this name was top of my head. And when I read the card, Bill Fraser, I read Bill Fraser, and I was like, I do know his name, but I didn't remember. And then days after, his name came back up again, and they told me he used to be the MLA and three ministers, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be amazing if I can have him again here. Not again, for the first time on this podcast. And yeah, so that was a good, I think, conclusion that we had on our stories. Another part that we have, as I always mention to my guests, is we are having like a gift exchanging. We're having a gift for you that you can have as a memory from this podcast, the very best. And we are asking our guests to bring us a gift too for the exhibition of the very best. Can I have that first, please? And for the exhibition of the very best. And this is gonna be all of these gifts. We are trying to organize an auction and raise a lot of money, helping back to the community. We try to maybe during January, close to Christmas time, and I'm hoping this project goes well and be a help to the community.
Good.
And here, what I have for you, we wrote with the laser your name on the.
Oh, thank you very
sign.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
With the bridge. Here is your camera if you want to show.
The very, which one? This one
one.
here. There
Yeah.
it is. The very best.
The very
I
best.
like that.
Yeah. I love this name too.
Thank you.
The very best podcast.
And I have something for you. As you know, I build model ships, and this is a carved ship I made, and I certainly want to donate it to your cause. And it's something that I enjoy doing as a hobby, and hopefully I don't know whether you sell them or what you do to them, but perhaps you maybe you have an auction.
Yeah.
Tell them it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do, definitely, because I do know that that's a great hobby that you have. Is amazing, and yeah, much really appreciated for this. Is beautiful also, like that. I do know that you are building it like all pieces by hand. I'm gonna try to. I do know you were interviewed by CMTV. I think that went through all of this process with you, and which is amazing. Another cool story. That's thank you so much for this.
You're very welcome.
This is very valuable for a podcast. Another nice story about this before we finish this podcast and this episode is you're also building another ship that is like
the Victory.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that like the story of behind the Berbers Island and which was happening on the war of the
That was 1805.
okay.
Trafalgar.
Trafalgar.
Where Lord Nelson, he's the one that organized all the plans and everything for the attack, and he was killed actually in that battle. And they have his statue in London. I saw it on the one trip over that I was lucky to be part of, but that ship can be seen today. They're actually spending, I think, $30 million on restoring it, upgrading the wood and everything else on it. But it's over 300 years old. Wow. The actual ship.
The actual ship is.
The actual ship is there. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And if anyone wants to go on the internet and just type in HMS Victory, they'll see it. And that's the ship that I'm making the model of.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very cool. I love like I don't love like shipbuilding, but I love like making a model of something.
Right.
I used to make a little model of like buildings. I made Empire State.
Well, I have an airplane story for you if you want.
Airplanes.
You may not have time
No,
for your
we have
podcast.
time.
Before model ships, I built model airplanes, and you could fly them. They're radio controlled.
Oh.
And one particular day, I was down in Bay of Inn where we had a cottage at the time, and I lost the plane in a tree. We didn't know exactly where, but we lost it. And this plane would have like a 6-foot wingspan.
Okay.
And so anyway, we searched everywhere and we couldn't find it. And I remember coming back and telling my cousin, Bob McDonald, about it. He said, "Oh, we'll call up Search and Rescue." Well, Search and Rescue were based here at the airport at the time. Mm-hmm. Now, this is back in, 1960s, in the 60s. Okay. Yeah, it would be in the 60s. And so anyway, Bob said, "I'm going to call up the Search and Rescue and tell them there's a plane down." I said, "You wouldn't." He said, "Yeah, I would." So he did. So while I was there, he called up Search and Rescue and said, "There's a plane down in Bay of Inn." And they went, "Where? What were the coordinates?" And I was thinking, coordinates? What's the coordinates? So anyway, they said, so I described, it was between two roads. So he said it's in that area between, the Bay of Inn Road and the other one. So that's all we told them. And the next thing we knew, they could see the helicopter taking off, and they went down and they spent a day looking for it, flying back and forth, back and forth. So I went down that night, and I can remember my mother saying to me, "Well, we were entertained today." She said, "A helicopter flying over 100 feet in the air all day," but Anyway, I said, did they land or anything? No. She said, no airplane. I said, okay. So we got back, and there was a message for me to call them. So they want me to tell them the coordinates again. Man, I didn't know what a coordinate was. So I said, I described it again. They went down the second day, and my God, they found it. And they lowered a guy down to the top of the tree and picked up the airplane. They landed the helicopter on the field and brought the airplane to my mother. They asked, where it belonged. And the thing was, I was only concerned about the radio equipment in it. The plane, you can make another one, but the radio stuff is, not cheap. So anyway, I sent them back a couple of bottles of something to thank them, and they were appreciative. And that was the end of that story.
Cool story, yeah.
It's a pretty good story.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Anyway.
That's amazing. So before we finish, I forgot to kind of go into the fun part of it, which is Persian pop quiz that we have it, because I'm Iranian. I always go and ask some questions. I learned English, so I want to people
you're asking the wrong person when it comes to the stuff.
That's just like an easy game. It doesn't have to be going perfect. I will give you a Persian phrase and I will translate it for you. You just need to guess what's the meaning behind it in Persian, like in English, in your language, but the translation doesn't mean that exact phrase.
I see.
So the phrase that I made for you today,
you're translating it though.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah. So it means, and you can repeat the Persian one too. You just give
no,
it a
that's
try.
fine.
So the Persian word is yachesh abshod. I'm gonna tell it slower. Yachesh abshod. It means her ice melted, or his ice melted.
His eyes melted.
Yeah. Do you want to repeat the Persian version?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to. I don't want to embarrass myself any worse than I have tonight.
No, it is a lot of things happening to me, like in English, that sometimes I can't really pronounce it. Some of the words are hard, but yeah, it means her ice melted.
Right.
What would you think is the meaning behind it, actually?
She fell in love.
No, it's kind of close, honestly. The meaning behind her ice melted, or like yachesh abshod, means, did you see some of the kids going to parties that at the beginning they are so shy and they don't talk to anybody, and at the end of the party they are super active and making a lot of trouble? So it means they said yachesh abshod. It's like he or she doesn't feel shy anymore.
Okay.
They say yachesh abshod.
I've never heard that expression.
No, right.
I mean in English. I'm sorry?
What would you call a person like that kid, like that transition?
Well, like me, shy.
Shy, so shy, a shy person becoming a
That's the one thing nobody knows, not too many people know about me. I'm the shyest person in the room.
I used to be too.
Well,
I am.
I still am. I am very uncomfortable walking into a room with people, even though I may know them or not know them. But I don't know whether it goes back to being brought up in the middle of the woods, not socializing enough, or what it is. But
yeah, today I was talking to one of my friends about how sometimes like people feel not confident. How can I say that? But they feel shy or feel stressed when they want to, for example, having a speech or something. So I heard this story that back in the days, our ancestors, they were living on a cave, and if they want to like live longer or like make living, they have to come out of the cave to go hunting and then come back. So the cave, short story, the cave was their comfort zone, and coming out of the cave means a lot of trouble, running, not to be eaten by animals or something. So these days is like we have the same stress these days too. Sitting on this chair and not standing up, having a speech is or cave, is our comfort zone.
Gotcha.
If we want to stand up, even thinking of it is gonna make us nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know a lot of people who are great on the speech, but they still have a stress and like feel bad when they want to do it, but still doing it.
Right.
But anyway, that was a cool thing I was trying to mention.
Okay.
Yeah, here is our end of podcast. Is there any last statement or any last word would you like to share with us, and we can close this episode?
Well, I guess all the worrying about doing this wasn't warranted on my part. I guess it'd be the best part.
Okay.
I think you certainly relaxed me, and I probably talked too much, but at the same time, it was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I hear. That's definitely a motivation for me to continue this. And thank you so much for again being with us. That was a great episode, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the very best. Have a good day.